Hello, everyone, and welcome to Forsa School public program. Today, I'm very excited to have a special guest with us. It's our final session, and I'm very happy to introduce our guest for the day, Yasmin Atassi. Yasmin is the director of Green Art Gallery in Dubai. She co-founded in 1995 by her late mother, Nahla Tabba. Green Art Gallery has played an important role in introducing modern Arab art in the city. Also has helped to establish a vital dialogue among some modern Arab masters, including Fatah Mudarris, Luay Kayali, Ismail Fattah, Daya Azawi, and others. Yasmin is going to talk to us today about navigating galleries. She will cover various topics, including, but not limited to, the role of the gallery, artist representation, and how to approach a gallery. Please help me in welcoming Yasmin. Yasmin, so good to have you with us today.
Thank you, Rania. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Saf, and thank you, Naqd, for this wonderful initiative. I'm going to be sharing my screen and for my presentation. I'm not sure how many, maybe some of you, we did a private session, I think it was 10 days ago.
Yes.
A lot of the topics I will talk about today I've covered in detail back then. But I've managed to sort of summarize the main important aspects. But I think me and Rania felt that I'll speak a bit about 15 minutes and then I'll let Rania interview me, because I'm sure that there will be things that I missed or that we open up to the floor. Or I'd like this to be more of a dynamic conversation rather than me monologuing for 1 hour about things maybe that might not be of everyone's interest.
Honestly, we had a great session for the private program for Forsa School, and I really want to encourage everyone to feel free to share their questions on the Q&A box. Yasmin will take us over the presentation as she mentioned, but honestly, Yasmin has been great in our private session in terms of really sharing and answering questions, and we appreciate that, Yasmin. Thank you so much.
Of course, of course. So can everybody see? They can, right? For some reason, oh, there we are. Okay, sorry, I'm not very Zoom friendly. So some of the things I will talk about in this sort of time, and maybe, I won't go into detail in them on my own, but maybe Rania can just push me to discuss anything that is further. One is the role of the gallery. Two is the different types of galleries. I'll be talking about the difference between a primary and a secondary gallery. How we generally look at artist representation and what that means, how we support our artist, and should you work with a gallery, because not every artist perhaps would want to, or their practice is suited for a gallery. And then I will go over into how to present your work to a gallery and what it means to be working with a gallery. I mean, on a fundamental level, I think working with a gallery can be romanticized a little bit. And I speak a little about what it means to work on a daily basis with a gallery. And then I'll end with other options to showcase your art, because I find that more and more people jump straight to being represented by a gallery, but I think there is many other ways of showing your work and getting that first exposure that you need to expand your practice before joining and being represented by a gallery. So this is what I'll be talking about in general, but please feel free to jump in and to ask me any questions or to just put them in the Q&A as well. So I'll talk about two different types of galleries, because I think it's quite important that people understand the difference between what is a primary gallery and what is a secondary gallery. A primary gallery is someone like Green Art Gallery and some other galleries in Astrakaal Avenue, for example. We are galleries that are focused on representing a core set of artists and technically living artists. Some might be, might be states or someone who just recently passed away, but in general, we work with primary and contemporary artists. A secondary gallery slash dealer is someone who works with an inventory rather than with a living artist. So meaning that it can be that I sell Picasso or I don't know, Hassan Sharif, but I don't actually represent the estate of Hassan Sharif. I just have inventory that I buy and sell. We are, and what I'll be talking about today is in the effect of a primary gallery, because I think that dealers are great. I think that there is a space for secondary galleries always, but it's not where I think the majority of our audience today is, and it's not where young mid-career artists need to be and will benefit the most. So I talk about, how we support artists. What does that mean? So through solo exhibitions at the gallery or through other exhibitions abroad, through art fairs that we take part in like Frieze or Art Dubai or Basel or FIAC. And these are quite important venues for us to promote the work, to talk about the work with curators, with collectors, with critics, and with writers. And there's something that pre-COVID was quite important part of our program. We would do like around 4 fairs a year. And not every artist likes to do fairs, by the way. Even my more established artists sometimes get a little tired. So we always try to balance. We try not to show the same artist in every fair. We try to be kind of strategic about how and why we're showing a particular artist in a particular fair in a particular city. So it could be, for example, that if I'm showing Seher Shah, it could be in London, it could be a couple of months before or after she's having a museum exhibition or a biennial in England. So we try to time it in such a way where it actually makes sense for the audience to be introduced or to see some of the work that she's doing. Mm-hmm. We also support them in doing a lot of outreach with curators and museums to include their works in group museum exhibitions or biennials or even solo museum exhibitions. This is a very big part of what we do on a daily basis in the gallery. And we set out strategies for each artist in the beginning of each year in conversation with them, where we talk about where they would like to show the work, what they're currently producing. Sometimes artists, they have these grand ideas of wanting to show in a museum or a biennial, but if you're not regularly producing work or you're not really focused in the studio, then it becomes very difficult for us to showcase the work to curators and to museums. But they are really important. Again, this is pre-COVID, but I'm hoping that post-COVID it will continue, because this is a way where you're shown in a non-commercial setting and you have a very wide audience to see your work. So from Gwangju to Istanbul to Sharjah, there are also, by the way, places where I look for new talent as well. So you show, it's kind of like a cycle, you get introduced to a curator, they put you in a biennial, other dealers or galleries see your work, and then you become part of that system.
If you don't mind, just to explain very briefly the difference between the biennial and the fair, because some people...
Yeah, absolutely. So an art fair is when we go and we pay for a booth. The gallery pays for a booth. So we take like, I don't know, depends. You can go from a 20 square meter booth to 100, 150 square meters if it goes in. And you pay and you showcase your work and then you sell the work there. It's kind of like a commercial event. A biennial is not, I'm sorry?
It mostly attracts buyers and collectors.
It attracts everyone. It attracts, if you go to Frieze on a weekend, anybody can go, but of course the idea is to sell work. The idea is to introduce, but also meeting curators and museum professionals in an art fair setting is very common, and it's one of the main reasons why we also go to fairs. A biennial is a non-commercial and a curatorial exhibition. So the gallery does not pay. Now when I say does not pay, I'll talk about the new dynamic of the art world where we have to pay, but not to not in terms of real estate, but in terms of supporting the production of our artists' work. But biennials are independently curated by curators and museum professionals, and they invite our artists to showcase their art for free. But a lot of the times there's no funding, so we have to jump in and either produce an artist's work or support their participation in some way. This happens more and more. Like the big bomb of all biennials is the Venice Biennial, and you'll be surprised at how little money the Venice Biennial has. So more often than not, the galleries come in and they support and they produce. And then what happens is that collectors see the work at a biennial and you kind of sell it off-site. But
Okay.
it's not really talked about, you know.
Thanks, Rania.
We also work with collaborating with other galleries. So this is also quite interesting and important because as you grow as an artist, it's important to not only showcase your work with one gallery or one context, but to have a gallery in North America, you know, for example, in London and Paris. And so what we do is we try to find, once we feel that the practice is ready, because sometimes the artist isn't ready, they're not producing enough. You know, to work with a gallery, you need to produce work. Not every day, but I mean, you need to be committed to producing work, and it's, you know, consistently. So we do that as well. Some of the other things that we do is we publish books. So the image on the right is a book that we published in the end of 2019 for the Lebanese sculptor Shawki Shukini, with an independent publisher. We're also, this spring, we are closing the publication for Iranian artist Naqd and Rania. So this is something that we do, and we manage the whole process. So we, not only in terms of funding, but also in terms of finding the writers, conceptualizing the book, and so forth. And we also do a lot of press outreach. So when we have, of course, when we have an exhibition at the gallery, but also we try to push for features in magazines, in specialized art magazines, for our artists. So some of the ways that we find an artist is recommendations from other artists. So many of my artists joined my program after existing artists told me to look at their work. And I think this is such a great way to kind of make a nice family. Other dealers, so meaning that we've seen the work in another gallery in, like, not in Dubai or in the region, but maybe you know, for example, the work of Brazilian artist Ana Mazei that we work with. I first saw her work at a fair in Brussels with her gallery from Sao Paulo. So I got in touch with the gallery in Sao Paulo, Jacqueline, and we started working with Anna here in the region. And of course, it makes sense because we're not part of the same region. So we have a different audience, we have a different collector base. We've introduced Anna to a completely new audience and region. So the gallery was very happy to collaborate on that. As I said, also, yes, Rania?
Can I ask you to tell us more about, so before you find the artist, what is the artist doing in order to reach this meeting point with the gallerists? How are they developing their practice, how their commitment? We spoke about this one before, but I think it would be important for the audience to hear what it takes from the artist side to be ready to be approached by a gallery as well.
Well, I think that I may have mentioned this in the private sessions, but I think I always find that residencies are very important. Also, artist-run spaces, like for example, here in the UAE, there's Tashkil, but there's also Bait 15 that's also gaining ground. That'll be your, what I understand is your last private session of the Forsa School. Also sort of university art galleries. So if you graduated from Slade or, you know, Central St. Martin's, and they have their own sort of graduate exhibitions. And this is where galleries who work with emerging artists actually come and, you know, look at talent. The Rijksacademie as well in Amsterdam. So there's so many different ways of sort of getting to that point of getting to the gallery. But what it's not is being lazy and just relying on social media. You know, it's not that easy. You have to work on the practice. I think the most important thing is that you have to work on having a very solid and sort of at least a solid series, a solid body of work. You know, I think that's quite important. And then you can show that. And when, you know, and I think it's the job of the galleries. I constantly, you know, I am on the lookout for new talent, and but I would never, it's very difficult for me to always look at emails of submissions. We don't actually work on email submissions. So, or open a social media 1 million messages that get sent, please look at your work. It's not the right way to kind of get a gallery. It's really, you have to focus on the work, showcase your work in tashkil, in, there is also in the UAE now so many independent initiatives where 10 years ago they did not exist. So I really think there is no excuse to say, well, there's nowhere to showcase our work. That's just not true. There's so many ways and so many sort of independent things that you can do on your own, where you can put the work out there. And then, of course, it's the role of the gallery to do their job and to see what's going on in their scene. Right?
Yes, we had actually one of our guest mentors, Augustine Predas, who gave us a public talk and a private session where he just organized his own exhibition among his network, and now you see him growing. And I understand some people feel frustrated about not being able to reach a gallery through sending their portfolios and so on by email or by social media. Of course, social media is not the best way, but we mentioned that having something as a landing page, a clear digital portfolio, even if they don't have a studio where they can share it, but networking through being in those committed programs.
I also find, Rania, that a lot of artists are lazy, so they don't do the job of researching. They send like a mass email to galleries, not checking their program. No one is going to look at the work. I mean, if you do, if I'm a gallery that does, like, I don't know, conventional, traditional paintings of calligraphy and flower, and if you're a conceptual artist, I'm never going to look at your work, and vice versa. So I think it's important to research and what if you're a target gallery or your dream gallery, and don't change your work to suit them, but just see if it makes sense.
I think that a lot of the artists sometimes are we're passionate, we want to exhibit, there's that ambition to be part of a gallery or an exhibition, and sometimes that's not the path, which we've spoken about this before. But I also think that it's that lack of maybe education or awareness of the professional aspect how do you approach professional?
I think that's why Forsa School is great, because I think these things are not taught in university. Like, you don't go to a fine art program and someone teaches you how to approach a gallery or how to get your work out there. They just teach you the fundamentals of your practice, and then they leave you there, right? And you're just kept there wondering, like, how the hell am I going to eat, with a fine art degree? And how am I going to show my work?
And you mentioned something in our private session that a lot of the artists who sign up with galleries actually have full-time jobs or part-time jobs that are teaching in university.
I actually really encourage that at the beginning of your career, and maybe even keep it, because I think it keeps much less stress on you, because it's really difficult to earn a good living on just selling art. I mean, even my mid-career artists are still teaching, because some of them need it, some of them enjoy it, some of them need the health insurance that comes with it, so many different. I think there is no need for this romantic idea that I'm going to be an artist and I'm going to do nothing else, and I'm going to, I don't know, sit and paint all day and make money. It just doesn't happen,
And we're trying to abolish this concept that the artist is like, you have to be a starving artist, or that you have to struggle, or that agonizing story that you usually hear with the artist journey. It doesn't have to be that. There's a lot of artists who are actually very professional, very organized. They know how to organize their time, their skills, and so on. And to work with a gallery space that's providing you with a professional work atmosphere, you also have to meet halfway through from both sides. As you said, the gallery provides certain opportunities, and the artist also needs to provide. It's kind of like when we say the word networking, I feel like sometimes it can be misunderstood. But as you said, something as a residency, something as being, if you have been privileged enough to go to an art school, that can provide you a good network of artists that you grow with them and keep in touch. But there's also a lot of those independent artists artist-run spaces that are sometimes it's just a group of young people doing something in their
Absolutely.
apartment or in their workspace that they can find, and
Yeah.
you start to hear about them, and they start to move, and it's just an interesting thing to see their journey as they grow. There's a lot. I've known artists who never went to art school and managed to become part of exhibitions and
True,
biennials and
very
so
true.
on.
Yeah, very true. I totally agree. I think that one has to, and also, you know, this is something that of this slide, like sometimes you may think that the only way to go, as I said, is to go gallery, but sometimes no one really understands that to work with a gallery is not just, you know, to have one painting every 6 months and to sell it. I mean, basically, for us to, when we look at an artist and we say, okay, can we work with them? First, the work has to be really interesting, right? Like it has to really, and then I look at their output, because there's no point in me, you know, working so hard on promoting them if they can only give me like, I don't know, 2 or 3 works a year, you know? I mean, because a lot of our day-to-day work is not like direct selling, it's about promoting the work. Selling comes as a side, you know, it's something that comes as a product of the promotion, and the promotion is so labor intensive and time intensive that if I'm not able to pay my staff, you know, with basically that's how we, you know, pay our salaries and pay our operating costs and pay the fares, right? Like if we're going to go to a fair and the artist is like going to give me something like one little work, then it doesn't really make sense for me financially. I may be able to do it like once or twice, but I will not be able to continue. So they need to understand that there needs to be some kind of steady art practice, and there needs to be a commitment. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have a physical studio. You know, a lot of artists these days don't have a physical studio, but you just need to have a steady production, not commercial to the extent where you do one painting every day, but a steady production. So the question is, should you or should you not work with a gallery? That's something that I hope by the end of my presentation, people will have a better idea and maybe give themselves some time to think about it and look at other avenues. But I really feel like, really, I can't stress the fact how things changed in the UAE and how, you know, what stops you from going to, I don't know, a small little storefront in Karama, you know, and doing something with a bunch of friends. There's nothing that's going to stop you, right? And actually, this is where you're going to get the attention of the gallery, is more than, you know, sending an email or, you know, bombarding or coming with your portfolio to a gallery. Please don't ever do that. We're not sitting there waiting for people to enter. We're actually really, really busy. So here I'll be talking about, you know, how to present the work to a gallery, obviously to how to prepare for a studio visit, if you have a studio. If you don't have a studio, then I'll talk about it in the next slide, about having a nice portfolio, a clear portfolio with your bio, with nice images, and then meeting with the gallery. So I'm meeting someone tomorrow, I'm not going to the studio, but they're coming over, they're gonna show me their portfolio. And that's fine. And that's sometimes a nice way to begin a dialogue, because sometimes a studio visit can be really stressful for the artist and can be maybe not so interesting for both parties if the works don't really merge with the program, right? Yeah. So sometimes it's nice to just meet up for a coffee, you know, talk about your life, about what you do, about how you start working as an artist. And then that then kind of progresses towards a studio visit. And then there in the studio visit, to really feel comfortable to talking about the work that is on hand. And I do suggest that when you do invite a gallery for a studio visit, that there needs to be a kind of concept or a series already done. Because if a gallery walks in and sees that things are like kind of, you know, a little, how to explain, not very thought out, you know, or sporadic, then it doesn't feel like they're going to get anything out of the studio visit. So until you reach a point where you really feel comfortable with the work and that it does represent your wider practice, I recommend that you just don't invite us for a studio visit.
I think that requires a bit of maybe like curating to a certain degree, where you take
absolutely
and make it a nice warm visit as well to the gallerists.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's more than one studio visit, you know? I mean, I've worked, there is no way that someone is going to go from one studio visit and tell you to work with you. It means that something is really wrong and you should have a red flag. I mean, it does take several times over a course of a year, you know, to see how the work is developing, to see how your practice is developing, to see also if the personalities match. Because the worst thing is, like, you know, I said it in my private, it's like, it's a marriage, you know? So you don't want to, you know, get engaged and then break off the engagement. That's easy enough through a group show or something. But when you're marrying someone, you really want to make sure that your personalities exist, and that you also, the one thing that's also important, that you both have the same goals, you know? Like, if your goal as an artist is to sell for, and like crazy amounts of money, for, I don't know, I'm gonna say like 1 million, you know? And if the galleries, that's not their goal is to promote your work and to promote your career, and you know, then it's never gonna work, because your expectations and their expectations are totally different. And vice versa, if your gallery is trying to push you, you know, to like sell, but you just want to take your time and, like, you know, it's not gonna work. So you really need to feel that it's the right fit.
Yeah.
And I think there is nothing wrong or embarrassing by asking, what is your expectations and what is my expectations? I think it's really a nice way of ensuring that things don't.
I remember that I think we have a question here. So we have a question which I was about to jump into, talking about, if you don't mind talking about gallery contracts. Is there some template one can refer to, or sample contract? Well, actually, yeah, we're gonna have that.
Yeah, we talked about this in the private session, that I'm not one of those galleries who has a contract with the artists I represent. I just feel like it's a little depressing. I don't know. It's like having a prenup before marriage. I kind of, you know, think of it as a sort of a handshake. And most of the time, artists I work with, they understand sort of the main points of what it means to be working with a gallery, right? Like production, commitment, not showing your work with another gallery in the same vicinity, you know, things like that. Not pricing your own work, not selling your work from a studio on your own, you know. These are like basics, right?
But did give an advice in terms of the duration. If you're going to sign a contract with a gallery, the duration,
I think a nice sort of comfortable duration is two years. It should not be more and should not be less, because it does take time. And as I said, it takes a lot of resources from the gallery to promote your work. And it's not nice to kind of exit too early, because they've already put in a lot and it doesn't look good in terms of their audience. But also you shouldn't be able to feel locked in too long, so that if things are not working out after 2 years, which is basically the amount of time where you do a solo show with a gallery. I mean, that's the only way you really can test a relationship. It's not through selling, it's about doing exhibitions and seeing the result of those exhibitions.
Yeah, and in 2 years' time, you'll have an understanding of how your relationship with them. You'll have
that time you'll be like, look, it's not working out. And I've seen it many times where I talk with an artist, I'm like, oh, you're still working with so and so, and they're like, actually, it just didn't work out. I mean, I'm sorry.
I mean, that could naturally happen, but sometimes being tied for 5 years, 10 years, and where the relationship is not good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I guess
so this is about the portfolio. Again, I see it so many times where I get a portfolio and then it just has images. That's it. Like, I'm supposed to understand what the hell the work does and who the artist is. Or I see something where it doesn't even have an interesting, like not even interesting, not a well thought out description of who are you and what are you trying to say as an artist. I think that's quite important. And as much art as we see, we need to see that you have formulated your practice in text. So I think that's really quite important. And then it doesn't need to be a one, A4 essay, just a paragraph, just a simple paragraph. And then where you have shown, where you have studied, any residencies you have done, any awards you have, you have given. And then if you, I mean, this is only for more like conceptual installations. If you have a description about each installation, and then the sort of images. It is also, I mean, I don't know, some people, it's a lot of, you know, Kamruz just did his website recently, but it was a nice way to just for galleries to independently look at work, you know, and then if they want more information, they'll contact you. And there's many easy ways and cheap ways of doing website these days. You know, you don't need to be like you don't need to hire a website designer.
Public sessions was with other guests who covered talking about your social media, writing the statement, and how to be present online. So please, we'll have those sessions uploaded later on so people can tune in and learn from them.
So a lot of things that happen is social media harassment. I call it harassment because I get the same person. Either we get tagged, so like you know, when you make it a tag, this is the short way of me ensuring that I'm blocking this person to not do it again. Or I get some, hey, I'd love to, you know, show you space, like what are requirements? You know, these are not, we don't use social media for that. And it's just not, it's really not the right way to for galleries to look at your work. We do sometimes come across artists' work on Instagram. It never is, but not through this way. It's usually through them posting an image or a curator, you know, showing through a biennial or, you know, but never through, I never look through the messages of my social media account and see an artist's work.
I think also it goes back to the same point that you mentioned, that before even approaching a gallery or considering joining a gallery, is you really need to know if your identity aligns with the gallery's identity and themes and concepts and artists before you even try to approach whatever the way is. And yes, social media, the messages, yeah, I surprisingly it does still happen, and you hear it from
very much, and I'm amazed at what people expect. I mean, we can't answer on social media. We use social media to promote our program. You know, that's what social media is on. So this is one of the great ways of ensuring that we block you. So when you've come across, you've got in your gallery, and I see it so many times with emerging artists that they are not taking care of the materials of the work that they produce. So they use like cheap paper if they're doing drawing, which means that I frame the work, I sell it to a collector, and it starts rippling or starts yellowing or so forth. I mean, you really have to take care of conserving, of using good quality materials, good quality paint, and also ensuring that you use material that lasts your lifetime. I mean, you have to think every time you make a body of work, you need to think about 100 years from now, 50 years from now, is this work going to remain as it is, or is it going to disintegrate? This is very, very important. And this is with, obviously, mostly with, you know, installation and paintings and works on paper, but it can also be video, you know, like how do you disseminate video works into the world and make sure that you have the copyright of the videos? So this is really, really important, of just ensuring that you take the necessary steps to respect and taking care of your work. Because once it leaves your studio, there is no one, you can't control that anymore.
I've seen this happen before. Even installations, how do you transport it? Can you move it around?
Exactly. And then, you know, later you'll understand that if you're working with an installation, you need to have like an installation manual, you know, like if you are going to loan it or give it to a gallery or sell it, then we always ask for artists, it needs to be accompanied by an installation manual. What the collector or the lender has to understand how to reinstall this work.
Or how to operate whatever operates.
Exactly.
It's a kinetic
all the time. It's just really badly documented work, you know. I mean, using an iPhone, not professional photographers, you know. And I know it's expensive, and most of the time, if you're working with a gallery, the gallery should be paying for this. But you know, you can make, I mentioned this in my private session, you can make a barter with a photography friend, like someone who has a good camera and like has an eye for photography, and you can give them a nice little work, and then you can at least document the work. Again, once the work leaves the studio, you have no control of how it looks, but at least you've documented and you've archived, you know. So if you ever want to publish a book on your work, if you want to do a website, you know, if you want to sort of share this material with anyone, it cannot be through an iPhone. It cannot be through like a badly lighted image. And it's not that difficult. And here in Dubai, there are so many, you know, people. And I'll make sure to maybe include a photographer or two in my toolkit that I'll share as well. I'll just write that as a note.
Yeah, we have a lot of photographers right now who would appreciate an opportunity and are easy to reach out to. And yes, we always dread this moment where someone asks for a work, or you mention a work that you've done, but you don't have the photos, and it feels like it doesn't exist, or that you're too embarrassed to show it, and it's a missed opportunity.
Other things that are really important is obviously to archive and to title. I know it sounds really stupid, but most of the people just forget to do it, and they just don't, you know, measure their work, and they don't give the, I mean, when it reaches the gallery, this information needs to be present, because we work with professional databases and we input the work. So you have to be ready with titles, mediums, dimensions, the price we're going to set together is between the gallery and the artist, and then editions with the master copy. So many things need to be ready. And this is like annoying admin work, but it's really, really critical. Signature, again, and I have no idea even, I mean, I'm not going to name an artist, but I recently, like, maybe not recently, a while back, I did a solo exhibition and the works arrived and there was no signature. And they came, can you imagine? I said, are you insane? How can I show work without, oh, I forgot. I'm so sorry. I was so busy finishing the work in the studio that they forgot to sign a work. So this is a provenance. This is the sort of the only thing that will prove your copyright. So you absolutely have to sign work, whether it's at the bottom of the painting, at a small little corner of a drawing, at the back of a painting. Some people prefer to sign at the back. If it's a sculpture, it can be carved. If it's a medium that cannot be signed, then you come up with a certificate of authenticity. And you know, you kind of sort of specify the edition number of the video. You know, you've signed it that this is sold to this person and that I am the owner and so forth. Yeah. Pricing. Everybody asks me how much. I'm amazed at how some artists' heads in the sand, you know, and I get like, I get sometimes pricing that is so out of context and out of touch with the real world. When you're pricing your work, you have to price it. You have to understand that you are competing with millions of artists around the world. So your pricing has to make sense with you know, other artists in the world of your generation. Not in Dubai, not in Abu Dhabi, not, oh, my friend in Dubai is selling this, I'm going to sell that. No, it needs to make sense. And this is what a professional gallery can do. It can advise you because they know the market. And many times, I mean, thankfully I've never had, but I know that galleries and artists have not seen eye to eye in terms of pricing. You know, if you overprice your work, you're burning your market. And if you underprice it, so it's a really, you know, sensitive topic. Consignment agreements. I'm sure there are many listening to this talk who have lost works, who have consigned works to people or galleries or spaces, and those works have been damaged or lost. And obviously this is your work, whatever value it is, it's not about a value. And you need to have consignment agreements. You need to, consignment agreement, we talked about it in so much detail in the private session, but it will offer you protection, you know, in terms of, you know, the length of the consignment agreement. Like if you're lending a work for a group exhibition, then you decide, okay, I'm going to give it for 6 months. And after 6 months, this work should come back to me. Who's going to pay for shipping? Who's going to pay for framing? Who is going to pay for insuring the work, insuring back and forth? I mean, all of this is so important because otherwise, especially also when you're working new with a gallery and you're starting off, it can be very daunting and you just send work. I mean, sometimes I have to run after my artists and come up with a consignment. They're like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm like, no, I worry because I want to make sure that you understand that we have this list of works and that they are in our inventory. And also it comes with condition reports. So how to kind of ensure that the work arrives safely and documented that it arrives safely in our systems.
You know, Yasmin, this is something that's very important, and unfortunately, a lot of artists neglect is that they jump at the opportunity to exhibit and to showcase their work, but they would completely miss those little details where honestly the work will come back to you either damaged, sometimes it will never come back to you. And this is a story I've heard so many times from artists around. I think we really need to count to 10 before you agree to send your work and look at it.
Absolutely. And you know, there's nothing wrong. I mean, these days, there is nothing I do without asking for a written contract. It doesn't mean I need to hire a lawyer, but it just means that both parties understand the expectations and the limits and the timeline and who covers what, you know? It's simple. It takes...
Something very interesting that was mentioned so many times over so many sessions is that a lot of artists have imposter syndrome. So they hesitate to ask about contracts or to payments, getting a fee for taking part in a gallery, for example. They hesitate and they miss this opportunity to not, okay, maybe you're okay not to not get paid for something. That's fine, I'll understand it, but to protect your work, to guarantee it comes back to you, and have it documented by email, these little things that will really protect you.
At the same time, Rania, I find that some people are too scared to ask, some people ask too much, you know, so it's like it's a sort of a weird balance. So I mean, it's very important for you to have the proper expectations and like just understand your place, as one would say. And sometimes artists just ask too much and they things that don't make sense, and so that will backfire. That will stop people working with you. So you know, you can't ask for an artist fee to show in a commercial gallery. That's just not acceptable. You can ask for an artist fee to show in a museum show where you will need to put in significant amount of work. So if you're building a new installation for a museum show, then yes, you can ask for an artist fee. But if you're just lending an existing work from a studio, no, you can't ask for an artist fee. That's just not possible, you know? Also, I once came across something that actually really bothered me. And when you contacted me for this sort of Forsa School, I thought it would be a perfect example. One of my clients was looking for a particular kind of public work that I didn't have. So I recommended my collector to look at this sort of young artist work in the UAE. And the artist was very thankful, and they said, you know, would you like to work together? I said, no, don't worry about it. Like, you know, it's totally with you and the collector. And this was a really good collector of mine. And the artist then sends him like a document where she would charge him for a proposal. So this is just something unacceptable. You cannot charge for a proposal. If you want to work, so it's like me going, if an office comes to me and tells me, I want a proposal of artworks, and I tell them, sure, but it's going to cost you, I don't know, 5,000 dirhams to get a proposal, you know? So this is absolutely unacceptable. You cannot ask for a proposal for a sort of for a commission, you know, a proposal fee. You got to do the proposal, and if it gets accepted, then you get paid for it. So I think there is sometimes sort of misconceptions that, oh, I'm an artist, so people take advantage of me, and therefore I need to ask for sort of strange things.
Okay, I mean, yeah, this is very interesting because people are trying to have this balance of when do I charge and what's an opportunity to guarantee, like it's making a living, but at the same time not to miss opportunities and to have that balance. And I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stories that we hear from around as well of these situations.
So my final slide is just the other sort of final options to, because I know we're running out of time and I'm sure people want to ask questions. Is just what I was saying at the beginning. You know, please do, of course, I'm here to take any questions you may think, but please do also think about if you're a young artist who just graduated or you're thinking about doing your MA or MFA, then you need to understand that a gallery comes much later and maybe it's not right for your work. There are many artists who at the end, they decide not to showcase, not to work with a gallery. It's just too stressful, you know? And that's okay. You know, you can still earn a living doing something else. It's not a big deal, but there are great residencies. There's Delphina in London, for example. There's great artist run spaces and local art organizations. I think Tashkil does a wonderful job in graduating, let's say, artists for the gallery system. That's it for today, but Rania, please feel free to ask me anything that I may have missed, and anyone else who...
If anyone has any questions, please feel free to type it in so that we can answer it for you. Let's give people a minute. And I just want to remind everyone we're going to have a toolkit that has templates and references from all of our tutors that will be available online on Sharjah Art Foundation's website and Naqd Critique website. Inshallah, it will be available soon, as well as we'll have all the recordings for the sessions that we had uploaded as well on our YouTube channel. Okay, so far we don't have any questions. So yeah, okay. We don't have any questions so far, Yasmin.
Okay.
Okay, no, I got something now. Well, it's a question about the recordings. We will announce it once we have the recordings ready. We're going to announce it on Naqd Critique Instagram and Sharjah Art Foundation's accounts as well. So we don't have a date yet. I actually wanted to ask a question, but okay. I mean, yeah, we covered a lot of these the points in the private session, and the time allowed us to go into a lot of details into some of them. Yasmin, I want to thank you for today and for taking the time to take us through this. I mean, I just have one question actually to ask before we go, because right now with the limitations that are happening, most of the presence is online. And I remember that when you were talking about reaching out to galleries and networking, what do you recommend artists to do right now with the limitations that they have?
I don't think everything is online. I think that there are shows happening and there are, you know, there are ways to engage in person. Maybe not in groups, but there are ways to engage. By the way, I didn't mention it, but the Al Serkal Arts Residency is also a great one. They do, they also have like I think now they stopped because of COVID, but it's by application. But Al Serkal also has great network and great opportunities to either sort of showcase your work or also to work in a more curatorial setting. And I think you can do these things, Jamil as well. They have the youth takeover and they have sort of more, so there are things happening. It's not that you have to sit behind a screen and talk all day, but it might not be just in a group setting. I think SAF, I'm sure, has also where you can submit work. I think they have every summer the photography show, if I'm not mistaken, where you submit your work, but even the film. So I think there are ways, and just focus on your work. You know, just take this time to focus on the practice and to sort of have something solid, so that when you can show it, you would show it, and people, you know, a gallery, you can invite a gallery to. And by the way, there's nothing wrong if you know a gallery personally. It has happened to me where you would email them and saying, you know, I've been showing this work, I'd love to take your opinion. I mean, what's the harm, right? it's so much better than randomly spamming galleries, you know, with your work.
Yeah, it would be more of a specific approach. Yeah, I think also a lot of artists during this time, some of them took the time to focus on their practice.
Yeah.
Some actually took the time to join programs, or to study, or to it's different approaches. We also, like, even me personally, I received a lot of comments of people feeling completely isolated.
Mhm.
And I understand that this is a, I want to say it's a state of mind, a bit of the frustration, but perhaps in me asking you is also hoping that it would be an encouragement for everyone to
Yeah.
um, really keep in mind that things are happening. I mean, Forsa School happened from the pandemic. It resulted from the isolation that actually happened in the beginning. Salama Emerging Artist Fellowship, they started their cohort recently.
Mm.
There's a few art programs happening. We actually have a question. It's an anonymous attendee who's asking for a recommendation for a good master's program or universities to study art curation.
Oh. Hmm. Um, I need to think about this one. I know that it depends where, but I know that Courtauld in London does a really good course in curating, like a sort of an MFA. I want to say Central St. Martin's, but I'm not sure. But I think London is it has some really good offerings. And it depends on your interest as well. If it's contemporary art, if you want to sort of look at it from a more historical perspective, then there are also other schools like SOAS has a great sort of more historical background. But I think Courtauld can be an interesting place to check it out.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I think that would be the end of the questions for the day. I want to thank you so much for being part of Forsa School and for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining and for Saf for organizing this as well.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today and for joining our sessions. And as I said, we'll be uploading the recordings and we will update you through our social media channels. And see you, hopefully we'll see everyone again soon. Take care, Yasmin. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.